it's Rachel Maldonado,
And this is Dr. Paul Alexander.
and we are talking about connection. Dr. Alexander, why is connection important?
Well, I mean, it's a very interesting question, and I think the key answer should be that we as human beings are animals at the basic level, and we are social creatures, and we need the ability to interact with each other. We need to connect with each other so that we could look at facial features, animation in each other's faces, the emotions, etc., so that we can thrive. It's the only way that the species can move forward, because we have to be able to interact with each other. And it is such a potent, I mean, I will bring everything back to biology. And let's say, even if we use the COVID situation right now to show you, to explain how important the connections are, because you get grounded, your moral clarity gets defined for you. And during COVID, as an example, when we masked people for so long, especially children and adults, etc., we lost over 2 years of that ability to see faces and to see the emotional expressions and to connect with people. And that connection, we argued. Like, I wrote a paper recently in Brownstone with Jeff Tucker, that I mean, it's not a sad example I'm giving. I'm trying to explain how very potent this is. We've seen a recent rash of there were a couple of very troubling mass shootings in America. One in Uvalde, Texas, and one in Tops grocery store in Buffalo. And we wrote a paper quickly to explain that these guys were young guys, around 18 years old. And when we look into their history and their past, what happened was, particularly the guy who shot up the Tops grocery store, he wrote a manifesto. And in his manifesto, he said that he lost connection.
Mm,
He lost touch with people during the lockdowns. So he was around 15 and a half, 16 when they began in New York, Buffalo. The school was closed and society was shut down. And he couldn't see any of his friends. He didn't have many friends, but the few he had, he connected with.
yes.
Those are his words. And in closing society for him, he spent a lot of time on his own in the basement, and he went on the internet. And because of the time that he had, because he could no longer associate with people or communicate with them, he spent a lot of time on very dark internet sites, and he read a lot of things that poisoned his mind. And he actually wrote it out before he committed that atrocity, that he became a monster because of things he read on bad internet sites, but because of the lockdowns and school closures and his inability to see people and communicate, he had nobody to reach out to. And he was going through, the lockdowns hurt him like it hurt many people. It was the collateral damage from the lockdowns that we talk about, the social, the psychological, the emotional trauma. And he committed those crimes. And we wrote that paper. And in other words, we as human beings need what we call the predictable aspects of life. And as part of that, the predictable aspects of life, it involves the ability to communicate and emote and to connect with each other. And we also wrote a subsequent paper where we spoke about the masking of children in society. We damaged that so much so that we argue that we're going to see ramifications of it long term. And it's so very important, Rachel, that I'll give you an example. When somebody is put to death, whether in a medieval country or society or a more developed first world society, etc., it is important that the executioner or the person being executed, one of their faces must be covered, because you have to break that connection between human beings. Because the executioner often, if you don't do that, if you don't create that distance and sever that connection, even for a moment, once they could see the face of the person, they more likely will not be able to continue the execution. In other words, being able to see another person's face tells so much, and it's a human to human interaction and connection that transcends everything else. And it is absolutely critical that societally we learn to sit and talk to each other, not on the phone. We must see each other's faces and see the animation on the face. It's your animation that tells me a lot of things about what you're thinking, about myself, yourself, the environment, and how I should behave. So this issue of connection is so important. And I think it is a key question now, because of when we spoke about the collateral damage from lockdowns, and when we spoke about the damage to children, we were talking about that. We were talking about the inability for people to be able to connect, and especially in a supportive way during the trying times that we went through. And I think it's one of the lessons that we will learn, because some modelers suggest that it will take us the rest of the 21st century, 80 years, to recover from the damage that was done. And so it's a very interesting question. It's a very terrible situation, because, I'll end that first question with, I remember in university, I believe I did, maybe it was in a year one course. I can't remember it exactly, so don't, but I could remember the generalities of it. It's a very interesting, it's called the executive monkey experiment. Executive monkey. And it was these groups of monkeys that were raised. One group was raised one group was raised where it was raised in isolation by itself, by themselves. And another group was raised where the monkeys could associate and communicate with each other. And what we saw is that the group where you isolated the monkeys from their ability to contact and communicate, even navigate the environment, those monkeys became very ill. The fur dropped off, they lost tremendous weight, and they became mortally ill. And it showed us that even in the animal environment, and we are animals at the basic level, that the ability to live in an environment where you have some sort of social support and constructs is very critical to your survival and your ability to have control in that environment. Because I believe in that experiment too, that I think, if I could remember it correctly, the monkeys had access to food, but they would dictate, I believe, access to the food. I'm trying to remember the experiment correctly, by pressing a button. And I think it had to do with things over, I think they were actually introducing some sort of mild electric shock. But the point I'm making is that what we found is that the monkeys who had control over the feeding schedule, I believe, were much more healthier animals than those who had no control, and began to show us that in human beings, particularly in the animal kingdom, so I suppose in human beings too, what is very important to us is our ability to control our own decision making. And if you take that control out of our hands, so if you put somebody in an environment where you slowly or quickly remove their decision making, like what happened in the pandemic, though people could become very, very severely ill emotionally and psychologically. People must have control. People must have control over what they do, what decisions, and even if, even if, even if they're young people, as a young person, a child even, what really is happening with growing up is you are literally, as the parent or the guardian, whomever is raising children, you are slowly transferring power to them.
Yes.
You are relinquishing your power and giving it to them. And they are, in a healthy way, are slowly taking it. If you raise children in a very dependent situation and you don't allow them to take that power and you don't transfer that decision making to them and allow them to make decisions too, that will create a potentially devastating situation. And we could talk so much about that. That's such a, I wouldn't say loaded question. It's a question that is so rich that we could sit down and unpack it for hours. So maybe I should go to
Yes.
the next one.
Yes, connection. It is so complex. And do you have an example that you've experienced positive connection?
Right. Well, I'm kind of a very social person too. So, I connect well with people. Well, I mean, you could tell that I like to talk. So, I was raised, I came from the islands too. So I have that type of personality where particularly I like to share information. I like to share what I know with people. And I like to listen. I'm very curious in that sense. So I have this thing where when I meet people, we'd stand up, we would chat, we would talk, we would drink a beer or something because I want to know, but not out of it's just curiosity, but I really want to know so that if there's a way I can help you, because I think in life the key is when we meet people and we touch is in some manner that we walk away. When we walk away, I and you, I and whoever have benefited some way. Like I have given you something, and I think in this connection is an exchange of stuff. You are taking things from me that you need, and I'm taking things from you that I need. We don't even need to discuss it. People understand at a almost a subconscious kind of a level. There's a psychological thing that's happening between people, a give and a take. And I think like one of my colleagues, Dr. Harvey Risch, when I was in Washington in the US administration, I was going through a lot of trauma there because I was dealing a lot with the press and a lot of the fallout of the pandemic response because of, it was a political environment and the elections was there. So all of us who were working in the administration were under attack by the press daily. And it was very difficult for me because Washington is a very isolating place. And, you would have a lot of things said and written in the press and you want to respond and clarify and push back and to clear and to defend your own name. And you can't because then the government will be informing you that you can't speak, especially in the election year, because, in our situations, the key is you want to keep those who are running for election, whoever, they to be the focal point and on the screen, not you. So the media uses that situation to go after people, knowing that you would be constrained in your ability to respond. So I was having really, really difficult times. And I remember Dr. Harvey Risch, who I am part of that early treatment group with Dr. McCullough, Dr. Risch, Dr. Zev Zelenko, etc. I knew him academically and technically before, but I never knew him as a person, as a friend. And all of a sudden I got a call from him and he told me, but he Skyped at first and then he called and he said, how about later I give you a call because I seen a lot of stuff in the news and, you're probably going through a very difficult time. And I was, it was bad. And it was very important because at that point we made a connection and we became lifelong friends. I mean, that was like 3 years ago now, but recently when he retired from Yale, he had a lunch kind of dinner in his house in Connecticut, and he invited me to come and even to give a speech, a 2-minute speech on his behalf, you know, which I was so honored and privileged because he became a good friend because at the time that the moment that I needed that the right words and understanding, he reached out and we connected. So it was very important. And now we are just good friends. He's a good guy. He's a good man, a good human being.
Wow, that is such a beautiful story of connection. And Dr. Alexander, what is your tip for others to develop connection?
Well, I mean, I was trying to say it earlier, you know, it's almost like the way I look at life is when I meet somebody to talk to, even for the first time, like if we meet on the pavement, walking down the street and stuff and that, in my mind, you know, I want us to walk away where I am happy that we spoke, you are happy that we spoke, and if there was some way in the interaction that I learned that there was some need on your part, or sometimes you understand people's needs with via unspoken understanding. You don't even need to say it. You could interact with somebody and understand what is happening and what is taking place, and you figure it out, and then you you I it's almost like there are people in the world that I've realized that they have different stations in life. And my station, my way of realizing is I need to give back constantly. So like
Wow.
I need to hear people speak to me and I need to hear what their challenge is or the issue. And I want to help fix it. And if you don't want me, if you don't need my help and you let me know that, that's fine. But I'm not going to impose. But they have ways that you could assist people and help people without even them knowing you are helping them. But they need the help. And that's the way I am. Personally, that's where I grew up. And I think to connect with people, you know, you have to be very honest. You have to be very open too. Because you know, if you 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 can't connect if your arms are folded like this, you know, your arms
Yes.
have to be open. So you have to be receptive, and you have to understand that the people have different ways of communicating, and people bring often people bring a lot of hurt and pain to the situation. And you have to be sophisticated and finessed enough that you could nuance the discussion and understand where they are. And you have to find the right words and choose the words properly so that people could understand that you're coming at them with what we call unconditional positive regard, meaning I I meet you, I don't want to judge you. Whatever is out there or has been said or what, doesn't matter. What is important is my one-on-one interaction with you. I don't care what other people have said, etc., or what your reputation was. Or doesn't matter, because you need to judge people to on the arc of their life, their full life, and everything about them, and not just one moment or one mistake they've made. So I I think my greatest, what I try to do always is let people know that we have to be non-judgmental, and you have to feel no threat that in our paths crossing, that you feel that I support you. Whether I agree with you, that's a separate discussion. You could not agree with somebody, but you could still support them. And it's very important. And I think people need to talk. people need somebody to listen to them. And you'll be surprised. I know of many people when I ask them, when we talk and they just keep talking. And I said, has anybody ever asked you what was your thoughts on the issue? And they would tell me, no, nobody has ever asked me what I was thinking. And it shocks me. And it made me realize that that's part, especially in the modern IT era today, that people have lost that ability to communicate and to connect with people and interact, so that they've even losing the verbal skills.
Mm.
But what people want is to be able to sit and just talk and share and turn off the phone and just talk with no judgments. No judge, just listen. It's like that show. Remember when you look that show with that guy who got trapped on that island? I forgot the name of the show. And while he was trying to find his way off the island, there was this football, and he named the football Wilson.
Yes.
And he would have the football there on the beach, and he would talk because we need to get him through his trauma of being trapped on an island, and he may never come back to civilization. He needed still to talk to that football to get him through day by day, for it to make sense to him and to have a conversation. So it's very important, very,
Yes.
very important that you find that person that you could communicate with and they're willing to listen. And I remember, I'll close by saying this, I remember I was dealing with a very serious issue some years ago, when in life you have your own little tragedies here and there. And somebody very dear to me sat down and said, I know how important this is and the difficult time you're going through. So I will sit here and you talk. You talk for as long as you want, and I would listen. I wouldn't even say a word. And if you're tired of speaking, when you get there and you're tired and you can't talk no more, you just listen. I will talk. Sit back. And that was very important to me, because it made me realize that when you're going through difficult times, people just need the ability to find people who would not castigate them or denigrate them or blame them. We don't want that. We just want the ability to share my situation.
Yeah.
And you listen. You don't even need to say anything. You don't even need to give your view of it. You just need to listen. And for many people, that's good enough. They gain strength from that and they can move on. So that's how I'll answer that.
Yes. Wow. You are all heart, Dr. Alexander, and thank you for sharing your insights on connection.
Thank you.